parties. The vendors sometimes spend over $100,000 on a party by renting out a whole nightclub and giving out free drinks and food to their customers. With all these parties, I got to thinking, you know what? I should throw a party. A Darknet Diaries party. Now, you might be wondering, Jack, I heard you're a private person and nobody really knows what you look like. That's true. Well, then, how do you go to these conferences? Here's my secret.
Nuclear launch detected.
I put on a big black hat, dark sunglasses, and a bandana over my face. I kind of look like an old-time bandit in this costume, and it's perfect. Nobody knows what I actually look like, and I can still meet hundreds of people if I want. In fact, I've worn this costume so much that everyone seems to know me when I wear it. It's my brand. It's my look. And when it's on, people stop me all the time and say hi and talk with me. It's great. I love that. I can't walk 10 feet in DEF CON without someone shouting my name and saying hi. But when I take that costume off, nobody knows it's me. And suddenly, I'm an anonymous face in the crowd. And I love that anonymity is my default state. And I can turn on the notoriety whenever I want. I don't want people to know what I look like so that I can live a nice, private life. I love the attention I get from this show, but I also love that I can turn it off when I want. So my big idea for this party at last DEF CON was to step up that anonymity even more. Everyone knows I'm the guy with the big black hat, the sunglasses, and the bandana around my face. What if I gave everyone that same costume when they came to my party? That way everyone is Jack Recycle. I pitched the idea to DEF CON. They accepted it and showed me what ballroom I get. And I rounded up 20 of my friends and had it all planned. We had 4 DJs, 2 video DJs, and so much more. It was great. I ordered 800 black hats, sunglasses, and bandanas, and the party got underway. The room filled up instantly. 400 people came pouring in through the door, and they were all given these costumes, and they put it on, they played the game. But the real test was, could any of them find me in this crowd now, where we're all wearing the exact same costume? Amazingly, no. I was extremely hard to find. Actually, some people came in, looked all over for me, couldn't find me, and then left, and then tweeted, I just went to Jack Resider's party, he wasn't even there. And I was going up to people and I was asking them, hey, where's Jack? And nobody knew. I tried to convince a bunch of ladies, like, hey, I'm not actually the real Jack Resider. And they just laughed at me and walked away. It was amazing to have all these people come to my party, but I just had this very calm and happy and serene kind of experience to it because I could just float through the crowd and enjoy it without being mobbed by everyone that usually happens. And I wasn't even maskless. This is my party and no one can find me. It was hilarious to me. But it didn't stop there. I thought, you know what? I want to put my fans to the test. I believe that my fans, you, the listeners of this show, are the best, sweetest, nicest people in the world. And I want to prove that. I want to somehow be vulnerable to them, to give them a huge amount of power over me, and to see how they react to such power. I want to give them so much power that they can ruin me, and I want to see if any of them abuse it. And so I thought, okay, I'm here at DEF CON. What's the worst idea I can come up with to do in this party? And it hit me. Let the party attendees control my Twitter account. Sheesh, if everyone looks like me already, might as well be able to tweet as me too, right? So I set up this if, this, and that trigger so that when you text a phone number, it automatically tweets what you texted it. No moderation, no filters, just trust. Well, I couldn't figure out how to get photos to work, so it was just text. And I did block URLs, kind of the one thing I blocked. And yeah, we set up a projector on the wall, and we had a live feed of my Twitter, and it said, text this number, and it will tweet as Jack. And people texted. Holy cow, dozens of texts started flying in, but the automation kept up, and it just tweeted everyone that it got. People were testing it at first, just seeing if it was real, like someone said, meow, and someone said, does this work? And then people started writing their names up on there. David was here, and I love you, Andrea. And then ASCII art started showing up, and memes started getting posted. I was real nervous watching the screen, but a bunch of people were standing around watching the tweets come in with me. They had no idea it was even me. And they couldn't believe that Jack was so stupid enough to hand over his Twitter to DEF CON. I mean, they're right, you know? Of all the places to do that, DEF CON is the worst. These hackers deface anything for fun and delete and destroy stuff. This is a terrible idea. I'm going to get canceled. Something is going to be posted that is going to be absolutely awful for me. But like I said, it was a test to see how awesome my fans are, to be vulnerable with them and to see if they abuse that power. And you know what? They didn't disappoint me. I think the spiciest tweet I saw was, "I'm so horny right now." But after a couple hours, hundreds of posts to Twitter rate limited me. And they ruined the fun. They busted the party and blocked me from tweeting for like 24 hours, which I think is a fitting way of ending that whole experience. Like, it went out nicely. I didn't get banned. I just got rate limited. But by that point, the place was packed. And word got out of which one was me, and I was just surrounded by people, and it was great fun. We were having a blast. But what I didn't know is that there were another 1,000 people in line trying to get into this party. And I know it was 1,000 people because someone grabbed a box of pencils that had 1,000 pencils in the box and handed one to each person in the line, and they ran out of pencils by the end. We ran out of everything: hats, bandanas, stickers, sunglasses, bracelets. I think I met 1,500 people total in that weekend because I brought 1,600 bracelets and I gave them all away. DEF CON is known for long lines, but there were so many people in line for my party that even DEF CON told me they have never seen a line that long for a party ever. And that line was possibly the longest line of the whole conference that weekend, barely being longer than the merch line, which is always super, super crazy. We eventually couldn't hold them back anymore. We just opened up the doors and let it rip, and it was a madhouse in there. And I think the party went on for like 6 hours, all night long, and I used every drop of energy I had. But man, was it worth it. That was the best time I've ever had at DEF CON. And you know, to this day, I still get people sliding into my DMs on Twitter asking, "Why did you say this tweet, man?" And they're mad at some like hot take I had or something. And when I look at the tweet and I wonder, I don't remember ever saying that. But then I look at the date and I see that it was posted on August 10th, 2024. That was the night I will never forget. And it always puts a big smile on my face whenever I see a tweet from that day.
I can't build it. Something's in the way. Yes, sir?
This is Dark.
I read you. Reporting for duty. Yes, sir?
Grifter. How'd you get
Not
that
enough
name?
minerals.
So,
Yes, sir?
I always cringe a little bit when someone asks me this question
SCP,
because,
good to go, sir.
like many nerds out there, I used to read the dictionary as a kid. I looked for interesting words that I liked, and the definition that I came across of grifter was a
Nuclear
person at a
launch
circus
detected.
or carnival who runs freak shows or games of chance. And I was like, ooh, that's bad.
SCP, good to go,
And
sir.
then it said, again, also, the more widely known, a con artist. And I was like, also cool, I'll take it. So yeah, so I started using it for names on like video games. I would put in grifter.
You grew up in New York.
Yeah, Long Island.
And what was computers like for you growing up?
I was, I grew up part of the Nintendo generation, so I was really into video games. And my parents are divorced. My dad lived with his brother. And so his brother, my uncle, was a computer tech back in the 80s, so he had a computer. And I have ADHD on a fantastic level, but sitting in front of the computer or putting electronics in front of me was one of the things that kept me still. And so he encouraged me to do that as often as possible. I started playing games on the computer, which eventually led to my first online experiences, which were dialing into pirate bulletin board systems to download pirated games.
Back then, you were really lucky if you had a computer at all in your house. Nobody understood how they worked, and they were very expensive. And the problem with pirated games is that riddled with malware and viruses, so Grifter would download a pirated game, install it, and then suddenly his uncle's computer was all screwed up. Of course, Grifter didn't want to get in trouble for messing up the family computer, so he sort of had to learn fire how to troubleshoot the problem he caused, and this forced him to skill up at understanding computers. He wasn't just a user anymore. He was becoming a super user.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like we were forced to learn a lot of different things at those ages because we had to learn a little bit of everything. Like it wasn't just done for you. Like even being able to get online at that time alone required a certain amount of skill, like in order to, configure a modem and dial the right numbers and get everything put in correctly and, connect to different BBS software required different settings and stuff. And because it was like that, it meant that there was an assumption that if you were online, that you were an adult. I could post things and nobody knew that I was 10 years old, and I really liked that.
But Grifter was quite a mischievous troublemaker, and he gravitated towards the darker parts of the internet.
So the pirate bulletin board stuff and posting on there eventually led to somebody on one of the BBSs saying like, hey, just based on the stuff that you're posting, I think that you would really be interested in this other bulletin board. And they posted a number and I dialed it up. And it was a hacker BBS. And I went crazy, basically. I thought it was the best thing ever. I read everything on that BBS, like all of the text files about different systems that were out there, basic commands for different things. Like I was like fantasizing about operating systems I'd never, contacted before and being like, oh, I can do this, I can do this. And it wasn't just different operating systems. It was, the computer viruses and like how to write a virus and do all these different things. And I was fascinated by it, and I just loved all of it, and that was it. I was in.
I know exactly what he means by being in. I got on bulletin board systems too when I was young, or BBSs, and it was strange and weird, and I didn't get it, so I didn't enjoy it. But when I got in AOL, I found some chat rooms where a bunch of people were just talking all at once in real time, and that blew my mind. I was instantly hooked on chat rooms. I would spend countless hours just talking with tons of people. That's when I fell in love with the internet. I was in. I soon discovered IRC after that, and I've been in ever since.
And living where I did, I thought, like, okay, well, I'll probably never leave New York. Right? The idea of like traveling the world and doing things like that was as foreign to me as those places were. But a computer changed all of that. I could dial into a system and hop from one to the next across networks that were traversing undersea cables and ending up in other countries I never thought I'd get to travel to. And I thought, well, if I access a system, let's say in Amsterdam, I know that when I do that and I'm interacting with that machine, the lights on the modem or network card are flashing and the hard drive is spinning up because I'm accessing files from there. And in my 12 and 13-year-old brain, I felt like I was there. Like it was my way of touching a place that I didn't think I'd ever make it to physically. Like I knew that it was in a closet somewhere and nobody could see it, but somehow and in some way, I was physically affecting that environment.
Additional supply
That's what he
depots
was up to
required.
outside. But in normal life, in the meat space, he was constantly getting in trouble.
So growing up without a lot of money in an area where people didn't have a lot of money, I would say I wasn't a good kid. I've been trying to make up for it ever since. But we did crime. Like I shoplifted like crazy. I ran every scam you could run. We would steal
Additional
cars.
supply
We would break into
depots
cars and steal
required.
stereos and speakers.
Upgrade
We would
complete.
live
Additional
near a
supply
marina. We would
depots
go rob the
required.
boats. Like we'd break into houses. We fought people constantly for fun. Like it was.
Okay, tell me about one of these fights.
Okay, so
Your forces are under
I like
attack.
fighting. Like I like physical fighting. I don't know why. I think it's just something I enjoy it. I know that makes me sound like a psychopath, but I like facing off against somebody else and seeing where they come out on it. At the time, it was just we would
Base
get
is
in
under attack.
in fights with either random people or people from like, rival gangs, that kind of stuff, where it was just like, okay, you're in some part of town that you're not supposed to be in. I'd just get into fights. I'd go pick a random fight. I'd fight two people at once. I liked fighting, and a lot of my friends were the same way. And sometimes we would just go out and just get into as many fights as we could get in.
He says the area he was in had a lot of this stuff happen. And as a kid, if that's all you see, you kind of assume that's what everyone's like.
I thought that was like normal. When I watched TV and I saw the types of things that you'd see on like, the Disney Channel or something like that, the Disney Channel original movie, I was like, that's fantasy. Like, this is a fantasy world that people wish existed. I didn't realize that there were people who grew up in towns that, one, looked like that, or that people behaved the way that they did. I didn't know any different, right? I didn't know that it wasn't normal to, like, walk home at night, and if a car is coming, like, dip behind a tree or a telephone pole, because you might end up hurt, right? Like, you might end up in a bad situation. Like, I didn't know that that wasn't a normal thing. And so it was in part survival, and in another part you like make a reputation or get a name for yourself, where it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, don't get in a fight with him because you'll lose. My thing was like, I can take a punch and I can get hit a lot, and it's really hard to knock me out.
To get ahead, it felt like you had to break.
Research complete.
There was a chain of stores that were kind of department stores, like a Kmart type of thing actually, or something like that, where a couple of friends, we'd all go on a Saturday, and we'd go out to the store and we'd do like the barcode swapping, like so sticker swapping. So you just go out, swap the sticker on something, so you'd see like a crystal bowl, and then there'd be another glass bowl, and so you take that and you swap the price tags on it. So the crystal bowl that should be $300, you go buy for $30, and then you swap the tags back, and then you go return it. And we'd just go out on a Saturday and we'd hit like 7 or 8 stores, and we'd go buy at one store, return it at the next one, buy some other stuff at that store, go return it at the next one, go do like stuff like that. And for a small crew of people, we were pulling in some pretty decent money. None of my friends were into computers at all, but I was. And so I knew how to do some things that they had no knowledge of. Like carding is what we called it back in the day, which is basically just really identity theft and like credit card fraud. And then order a bunch of stuff, like computer parts or clothes or different things, and get them shipped or mailed to abandoned houses. I just leave a note on the door that said like, hey, UPS guy, like not home, please leave the package under a blanket. So that was something that my friends wouldn't know how to do naturally, that I kind of taught them, right? Like, here's how we do this, and then we can make some money. And so then we had essentially stolen goods that were sent to us, and then we would just, some of the stuff we got that we wanted to keep, and other things were things that we would then go and resell and get money that way.
These were things like Tommy Hilfiger jackets, Fila shoes, and other streetwear at the time. So he was looking fresh everywhere he went, and he would sell it for cheap too. He'd be your hookup. And of course, along with this lifestyle came drugs, so he dabbled in that, partaking in it himself for a while. But then he quit. He didn't like how it was ruining his brain. He saw his brain as a very important thing that he didn't want to lose. But he saw that other people were doing drugs, and he saw this as an opportunity to make money from it. So he sold it.
I did all this like physical, like meat space, like crime, normal crime during the day. Like I was like just a, like I said, kind of a shitty person, like a shit kid doing all this random stuff. But at night, I was still completely wrapped up in the hacker world, right? But then eventually I was just, I breaking into different systems, and I got into a system that ultimately turned out to be a large credit card provider, credit company.
First, he didn't know he was in a credit card provider. The internet's a dark place. You don't always get to see where you're going. Hacking back then was barely even hacking.
And that's the thing that is different about the time that we grew up in versus I think what we have with like hackers now, is that We do talk about these things like they're massive achievements. Like, it's like, oh, when I was a kid, I broke into NASA. And it's like, when you were a kid, you logged into NASA.
You just had to know an IP address or a phone number to connect to. And if they had security at all, it might ask you for a username, but it didn't always. Like, you could just type anything in and it might let you in. Or you could just wait and it might just time out and then let you in. It wasn't hard to hack back then, but nobody knew what they were doing. So it kind of was hard because there weren't tutorials on how to do any of this stuff. So if you just tried enough places, you might end up finding something that did look good. And that's how he got into this company, a credit card provider. And while he's in that network, he was looking around to see what files were there. And he found some training manuals for how to process a new credit card. So basically, after someone passes their credit check, an employee at this company needs to issue them a card. And this training manual shows exactly how to do that. And so here Grifter is, inside the company, inside the computer that is used to internally create a new credit card for a customer. He has the tutorial on how to process it.
And I went looking for the database. And then when I found it, it was not too difficult to then figure out what I needed to fill in and where. And the initial one was, I was just like, I wonder if I could do this. I wonder if I could fill in these fields. I could get them to send me something. And I filled out the fields appropriately and put in an address that I had been using as a drop for some of the card and stuff. And then I waited I just watched that house and I'd check the mailbox. Every couple days or something to see if anything had been delivered. And eventually, one day I opened the mailbox and there was an envelope in it from the credit card company. And it had a card in the name that I had put. And I was elated and horrified in equal measure. I was like, oh my gosh, like it created this kind of like excitement mixed with panic because I was like, ooh, this is real crime. Like this is actual bad. Even though all the other stuff was real crime, something about that made it very real to me, like holding it in my hands. And I remember running home, going into my room, opening up, holding the card in my hand, and then just being like, oh my gosh.
He
laid on his bed and just held it up, staring at his very own credit card. And one he doesn't have to pay back because he put a fake name on it. And the credit card company has no idea who he is and try to come after him. The letter said, $5,000 limit on this card.
After daydreaming about it for a day or two, I realized you can't ever use this. Like, you're not going to be able to walk into a store in a mall at 15 years old and walk up with your credit card and buy whatever. Like, it just didn't seem... I didn't realize also that there are kids that did that in other places in the world. Like, but I just thought there's no way anyone's going to believe that you should have a credit card. So I just sat on it.
Outstanding. Goliath Online.
But I was like, I wonder if that was a fluke. Let me see if I can do it again. Again, I sent another one to a different house, and again, it showed up. And I was like, okay, I got something here. I'm not quite sure what, because I know I can't use these. What can I do with them?
There was a guy he knew, the dad of one of his friends. And this dad was part of a group that did organized crime. Like, in New York, fireworks were illegal, but this dad would have Grifter and some other kids go around and see who wanted fireworks, almost like you're going around selling Girl Scout cookies, and then you put your order in of what fireworks you want, and then a few weeks later, Grifter would come back and deliver the fireworks to you. In fact, this guy was so into organized crime that he was often hanging out with mafia people and had connections to some pretty serious criminals.
Because I knew that he had some connection to, like, actual criminals, like, I approached him and said, like, hey, so I can do this thing where I can get access to credit cards with higher limits on them, and I don't want to use them. I don't want to be on camera in stores. I don't want to do anything. Is that something that you or, your people would be interested in? And he was like, yes. And he just said, yeah, I would. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, let me talk to some people or whatever. And he's like, what are we talking here? And I'm like, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000, whatever. And he's like, let me find out what I can get here. And then he came back and said, oh, well, I need to know it's real. Do you have something to prove it? Blah, blah, blah. I said, sure. Got him one of the cards that I'd gotten. And I was like, that one's, $5,000. And he's like, well, I can give you 10% for that. And I'm like, okay. So I get $500? And he's like, yeah. And then he peeled off $500 bills and said, this better work. And I was like, it'll work. And then I was terrified because I was like, what if it doesn't work? Oh my gosh, right? But so I was like, don't spend the money, right? Like, don't spend the money. But now I'd been handed money for something that I was like, okay, this is actually a little bit nerve-wracking. But it worked, right? And he came back and he was like, okay, great. Can you do it again? And I was like, well, I have one right now. He's like, all right, go get it, right? And I went and got it, and then I gave it to him, and then he peeled off another $500, and he's like,
your forces are under
just come to
attack.
me whenever you got it. And I was like, all right.
So Grifter logged back into the credit card company and processed another card under another fake name, and that was going to another abandoned house. And this was making money for him. But this guy wanted more. Much more. Grifter would get in arguments with him saying, man, if we do too much, they're going to know and they're going to shut us down. So, going for a while, Grifter was right. He would only give himself a new credit card every 2 weeks. And that allowed him to keep it going for 2 whole years.
I don't know how long that worked because I eventually just stopped doing it. And about 17 years old, I decided that I needed to get out of my town. Was sitting in the back of my friend's car, and he said, just wait until we're like 25. We're gonna own this town. I said, own what? Are you kidding me? Holy shit. If I'm still here when I'm 25,
are under attack.
you guys kill me. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get out. I have to get out of this town. And so I didn't have money, right? I didn't have a way to pay for college. I didn't have a way out. And the common response to that is I went to the military.
What?
So,
You went to the military?
Yeah.
This is a, I would not expect a life of crime, hacking, drugs, and then suddenly military.
Yeah, this was a massive shift in my brain, and I just said, like, I have to go, and I have to do this immediately. And while I was still a senior in high school, like, signed the papers, man, and committed to go. My parents had to sign me over because I wasn't 18, and I went into the military when I was 17 years old. So as soon as I graduated, I went into the Air Force, and that was an incredibly eye-opening experience for me as well, because right into basic training, I met people who they'd never been in a fist fight before, right? And I was like, how? Like, I could not comprehend how. How did you not run your mouth at some point to a level that somebody wanted to put their fist in it? And then I'd hear the stories about how they grew up, and I was like, what? My mom tried to raise me, like, with morals and whatever, and I did pretty good in some areas and really poorly in others. But the Air Force core values are integrity, service before self, and excellence in everything you do. And I took that to heart. I didn't even really know what integrity meant at the time. Like, I'd heard the word, but I didn't really know what it meant. And essentially, to me, the way that I took it was like doing the right thing, even if nobody's looking, right? And I was like, okay, do the right thing, even if nobody's looking. Great. Service before self. Okay, so put others before you. Always try to put others before you. Okay, I'll try to do that. And then, like, excellence in everything that you do. That was something that my mother had already instilled in me as well, where she was like, if you're going to be, she's like, I don't care what you are. If you're going to be something, be the best at it, whatever. If you're going to grow up and you're going to be, janitor, be the best janitor there is. You're going to be a surgeon, be the best surgeon there is. But if you're going to put effort into something, if you're going to spend your time on it, be the best, right? And so those core values, those like Air Force core values, really like took hold. And the military was really good for me because it forced me to be an adult. It put me in a situation where it was like, oh, you have to, you can't just tell somebody what you think of them just because you think it. You can't swing on someone because they mouthed off to you. You have to show up here on time, and you have to come ready to do the hard things and all whatever. The military was super, super good for me.
Forces are
He got
under
stationed
attack.
in Utah, and in the Air Force, he was assigned to fix F-16 avionics. He wanted to do that. You don't really get a choice, they just tell you what to do. But it was cool to cockpit and swap out instruments. And he was even deployed to the Middle East for a
Your
while.
forces
But
are under
after a
attack.
while, the whole thing was starting to frustrate him.
If there's anything that just riles me up or a pet peeve of mine, it's like inefficiency. And the military is really inefficient. So I would be like, hey, if we change this process, it would save us this many hours and probably this many parts and all this sort of. And they would be like, just do it the way the Air Force tells you. Like, I hated that.
Your forces are under
And then
attack.
also, in a lot of cases, you get ranked because you've been there longer or you test better than other people. It's not about leadership experience. And so you have to take order from people who were making
Your
poor
forces are under
decisions.
attack.
And I just couldn't do it. I was like, one, I can't keep my mouth shut. And two, I can't handle it like as a person. So I was like, I've got to get out. And so when I got out of the military, I only knew how to do two things. And it was work on F-16s or break into computers. And so I was like, okay, well, I
Your
guess I'll go back
forces
to
are
breaking
under
into
attack.
computers.
Stay with us. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we have to
Read the
break some
waiting
computers.
launch orders.
Now, Grifter was stationed in Utah,
Orders, Captain?
one state
Your
over from
forces are
Utah
under
is
attack.
Nevada,
Right away, sir.
where the biggest hacker conference in the world is.
Orders,
Def-
Captain?
So I knew about DEF CON from the first DEF CON, but being
Upgrade.
poor
Your
and
forces
being
are
like
under attack.
14 years old or something when DEF CON started, I was like, well, my parents are never going to take me to Las Vegas and I can't afford to go there myself. It was like a month or 2 months before I was separating from the military. DEF CON 8 happened in 2000. And I was like, screw it, I'm going.
Your forces
Military
are
be
under
damned, I'm going to
attack.
go. And so I did. I went out to DEF CON and, met my people, essentially. It was great. It was an incredible experience.
Let's move.
What makes you
Your
connect with
forces
the
are
people at
under
DEF CON?
attack.
So yeah, I've been to small hacker meetings before, but going and at the time it was probably, I don't know, there
Transmit
might have been
orders.
1,000 of us or something like that at DEF CON 8, if that. I love the fact that you could just, anybody could be talking about anything. You could walk up to somebody and be like, what you guys talking about? And they'd start talking about something, and whatever it was interesting. Like, there was something interesting. Or there'd be people crowded around a table with like computers and like some electronics or something or whatever, and they're like, oh, we're trying to get this thing to do this. Like, I had this idea in my head that I was like, oh man, if we could
Nuclear
actually
launch
take all
detected.
these people and like
Your
stick them on
forces
an
are under
island
attack.
and just be like, here's the problem that we have. Can you solve it? That there was like nothing that couldn't be solved. And so I knew, like, that I would always go to DEF CON. That would be it.
I felt the same way. The first DEF CON I went to was DEF CON 17, and I was back in 2009. Yeah, this place feels magic. It's just electric. It's amazing. And I was hooked from that first visit, and I've been going for 15 years now.
At DEF CON 8, a buddy of mine had brought 20 t-shirts, something that he had brought. And I was like, what's the t-shirts for? And he said, oh, I'm going to sell the t-shirts when we get there. And we road trip down, right? So he was like, I'm going to sell the t-shirts when we get there, 20 bucks a piece. And that will fund my weekend. So it'll pay for the hotel. I'll get to eat really good. Whatever, it'll pay for DEF CON. And I'm like, oh, what a cool idea. So the next year, I decided I was going to make t-shirts, but I don't do anything halfway. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get a table in the vendor area. I'm going to make a t-shirt. I had a really nice design put together, and I ordered 320 t-shirts. 20 to trade to friends and to other t-shirt vendors,
Your
and
forces are
300 of
under
them to
attack.
sell. So I took them down and we sold them all in the vendor area. It was a really nice design. So they were gone, and I was like, sweet! Like, I just made a bunch of money, like all the selling t-shirts. And then I met Russ Rogers.
Russ Rogers is one of the conference organizers, and asked Grifter to goon next year, which basically means to volunteer to help with the conference. There's a lot of different types of goons. There's crowd control goons, speaker assistance, technical support, and other things like helping with the vendors or contests. But at the time, everyone had to start with security, which is like crowd control and checking bags. And there are massive lines at that time. Someone has to keep them all in check. So he took the role of goon and was part of the DEF
Your
CON staff.
forces are under
At DEF CON
attack.
10, I was a security goon, and then at DEF CON 11, I went and I was a vendor goon. And yeah, and then I've been a goon ever since. So from DEF CON 10 till now this year will be DEF CON 33.
Gosh, 22
Insufficient
years of being with DEF CON
gas.
at this point. And because of his attitude of being excellent in everything he does, he quickly started taking on more responsibility at DEF CON.
I started doing things like I ran the DEF CON forums with another guy who went by Null Tone.
Transmit
The
orders.
two of us were the administrators for the DEF CON forums. At the same time that I was gooning, I was a vendor as well. I never stopped selling t-shirts. So I was a goon, a vendor. I was administrator for the DEF CON forums. I ran the DEF CON scavenger hunt. Oh, and then starting at like DEF CON 10, I started speaking. So I spoke at DEF CON 10, 11, 12, 13, or whatever. And so I was busy, right? And then somewhere in there as well, I eventually started running all the technical operations for Black Hat.
Black Hat is another hacker conference in Vegas, and it's happening the same week as DEF CON. And they're both started by the same person, Dark Tangent.
Nuclear
But Black
launch
Hat has
detected.
an entirely different vibe over there. It's more professional and corporate compared to DEF CON. I describe it as, at Black Hat, there are tons of companies all there saying, hey, if you buy our products, it'll make your company safe and secure. Well, at DEF CON, the overall message is, everything is vulnerable, nothing is safe and secure. And here's how to hack anything. So Black Hat, you see more people wearing collars and even ties, but at DEF CON, everyone just wears all black. Cargo pants are common, mohawks are common, and wires and antennas are sticking out of everyone's backpacks. So grifters started volunteering at both conferences.
I got busy fast, and then I had a day job on top of it. I did become, I guess, part of what would be considered to be like the DEF CON inner circle, right? Like where it's like, okay, we need to decide what DEF CON's vision is going to be, what direction are we going to go in, what are we going to, like coming up with new ideas to keep DEF CON fresh. Like I came up with the idea for DEF CON groups. So DEF CON groups
Your
is
forces are
hacker
under
meetups that
attack.
happen in different cities and different countries all over the world. They are very similar to the 2600 meetings that I used to go to when I was younger. And the reason that we kind of departed from 2600 was because they started to get political and kind of let their politics get involved in like, they were like telling hackers like you should vote for this person or vote for that. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the idea of saying like, you know, vote this way. And so I approached Dark Tangent, Jeff Moss, and said like, hey, I don't like this about where the 2600 is going. DEF CON has a lot of clout, you know, we could probably do something like that, and we'll do it by area code, and we
Insufficient
could just,
thespian
you
gas.
know, we'll come up with a
Away.
name for it or whatever. And he's like, I love it, love the idea. Talk to Russ, again, Russ Rogers, and he's like, yeah, let's do it. We came up with all the like ground rules and concept and all whatever, and the structure for it, and then we started running DEF CON groups, our meetups. I think it was February of 2003, I want to say, and it was Salt Lake City and Colorado Springs, which is where Russ is from. So we had DC 801 and DC 719. And those were the first two DEF CON groups, and we ran them until DEF CON, and then we announced DEF CON groups at DEF CON, and it spread like wildfire.
DEF CON groups has grown to over 100 chapters worldwide, and there's secretly really cool people who go to these things. A lot of people ask me, hey, how do I get started in cybersecurity, or where can I find a mentor? And I always recommend them. Look to see if there's DEF CON groups in your area. It's a great way to meet people who are super passionate about cybersecurity. And I attended one just the other day, and it was great. I met so many cool people.
I mentioned all of the stuff that I did previously, right? So it was like the DEF CON administrator, vendor, goon, running the DEF CON scavenger hunt. Oh, we also ran the DEF CON movie channel. Like it was a lot. I was doing a lot. And I said to DT after DEF CON 13, I was like, I'm gonna stop gooning. Like it's just too much. It's too much. He was like, please don't. You know, he's like, don't stop. Like, what's the problem? I was like, I'm just burning out. I can't run all of these things. He was like, okay, well, how about this? He's like, we're moving to Bangor next year. And it's going to be at the Riviera. He's like, and there's this space there are skyboxes that overlook the convention floor. And he's like, I think, you know, what if you were like in charge of whatever we put in that space? Like you can just, there'll be a small portion of the conference you can do whatever you want with it. Like, come up with something cool that people will
Your
want to
forces
do.
are under
And I
attack.
was like, okay. He's like, I'm sure people want to have parties or whatever. And I'm like, okay, great.
He goes to the Riviera, a place where DEF CON is going to be held that year. And he looks at the space and tries to decide what to do with it. It's a cool set of rooms. They're up high and they overlook the whole conference. And like I was saying, DEF CON has a lot of parties. Conference goes on all day and parties go on all night. In fact, there's so much going on at DEF CON, it's actually hard to remember to eat and shower and even sleep. It's the best conference in the world. So of course, these skybox rooms are perfect party rooms. That's a nighttime thing. What are you doing then during the day? And which parties are going to be up there? That's when Grifter got here. He posted the DEF CON forums. We have a place for you to host a party, but if you want the space, you have to fill the room with something cool during the day. You can't just come party at night.
And the first ones to say, okay, we'll do it, was Tool, the open organization of lockpickers. And they were like, we
Your
want
forces
one
are
of those
under
skybox
attack.
spaces so we can have a party. And we'll come in and we'll put out tables, put a bunch of locks on the tables, teach people introductory lock machines, bring all kinds of examples of things to bypass, and show people how to do it. And I was like, great, that sounds awesome. And then it was Russ who said, hey, I'll get some folks and we'll set up a hardware hacking area, and we'll have people come in and they can learn how to solder and learn how to do basic electronic stuff. That's great. 303 was like, we'll do talks, but we're going to do talks that aren't allowed to be recorded, that you can't have your phone out, you can't, nothing can be, it doesn't exist, right, type of thing. And I was like, that sounds cool, let's do that. And so that's how the village started, because the first ones to call themselves a village was the Lockpick Village.
Not only is that where DEF CON Villages was born, but it's also where Sky Talks was born. That name came to be because there were talks in those skyboxes at the Riviera. Because all the DEF CON talks are recorded and posted to YouTube, but Sky Talks is where no recordings are allowed, which allows people to give talks that are more secretive or maybe even incriminate themselves. I've probably been to a dozen of these Sky Talks and I've heard some pretty wild stories. But what's more is Sky Talks has kind of made its way into many other conferences where there's a smaller room off to the side and no video or recordings are allowed in there. So that idea also has stuck and spread.
So the next year when it came around,
Your
the hardware
forces are
hacking
under attack.
people called themselves the Hardware Hacking Village. They adopted the name village from the Lockpick Village. And then another group started the Wi-Fi Village, and they just immediately adopted the name Village with theirs too. So they started calling themselves the Wi-Fi Village. So the second year of DEF CON 15, we had the Lockpick Village, the Wi-Fi Village, and the Hardware Hacking Village. And then that concept of having these broken out areas spread to other conferences. People were like, oh, we're gonna have a Lockpick area. Oh, we're gonna have one. And they started calling them villages. And so the village concept, or those little community areas that you see at all of these other InfoSec and conferences and stuff, all
Your
came
forces are
from
under
people
attack.
wanting to throw a party in a skybox at DEF CON 14, and then the villages were born.
Delighted to, sir.
Now, when Grifter first started getting involved with DEF CON, everyone only knew him
Insufficient
as
vesting. Your forces are
And that's the
under
thing about
attack.
this conference is it's not unusual that people just know you as your alias or your hacker name. And nobody even questions it. If you say you're Grifter, then you're Grifter. Nobody's going to be like, oh, that's funny. What's your real name, though?
I read you.
No, DEF CON folks
Your
are
forces are under
get it.
attack.
Privacy is important for all of us.
I had been in Grifter, like I said, basically I picked that name when I was about 8 years old, and I used it in the hacker community, and nobody knew my name. When I went to hacker meetups, 2600s, anything I did, no one knew my name. I had no online presence at all, and I was proud of that.
Your
People
forces
didn't
are
know who I
under
was.
attack.
And then at DEF CON 9, my wife at the time, she came with me, and I said something to her, and she was selling t-shirts. And I said something to her, and I was like, all right, I'll be back in a little while. And I walked away, and I started walking away, and I got a few tables away. And she said, oh, wait, Neil. And I was like, and I turned around, and the look on my face must have just been like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And then I'm staring at her, and she goes, oh, sorry, Grifter. And I was like, oh my gosh, because now even people who weren't
Your forces
looking
are under attack.
turned their heads and were like, what? Like, and then there were guys that I'd known 7 years, and they were like, "Your name's Neil?" And I was like,
Your forces are under
they're
attack.
like, "Huh? You don't look like a Neil." I'm like, "Cool." Like, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So that anonymity, like, to some degree, like, it flew out the window.
So after a while, Griffith got put in charge of running the Wi-Fi and network at Black Hat, that other conference that's happening in Vegas the same week as DEF CON. They call it the Black Hat NOC, which stands for Network Operations Center. And I should say, even though Black Hat and DEF CON happen the same week, they don't actually overlap. Black Hat is like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and DEF CON
Your
is Friday,
forces are
Saturday,
under
Sunday.
attack.
And I should also mention that there are many other conferences happening that same
Yes,
time as
sir.
well. Like there's B-Sides, which is a big one, and it's on Wednesday and Thursday. And there are other ones happening around town, like there's Toxic Barbecue, which is where a bunch of people meet up in a park and barbecue. And there's a DEF CON Shoot, which is where people go to the desert and shoot guns. And there's just meetups like all over the place, like Diana Initiative and QueerCon. At any given moment during that week, there are 50 things happening, and it's overwhelming. And
Your forces are under
so anyway,
attack.
Grifter was tasked with setting up the Wi-Fi at Black Hat, which you can imagine, trying to get a Wi-Fi network up and usable at a hacker conference is challenging.
Yeah, it is. It's actually incredibly difficult, but it's also super satisfying to do it. It makes it fun. You're going up against multiple different types of attacks
Your forces
ongoing
are under attack.
throughout the conference at different times, trying to hit you in different ways. People learning new things and getting creative. Like we've had stuff where like somebody discusses a vulnerability for a piece of equipment that we're using at the conference, and we've got to scramble to try to make sure that the network stays up because they just hold 500 people in a ballroom. How to do something against a piece of equipment that we've got not. We call it the Black Hat knock because it is a knock. Like it is that we replace every router, every switch, every firewall, every access point at whatever venue we go to. So now that's Mandalay Bay. It's the Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, the big cell center in London. But we bring all of our own equipment because it allows us to have control over the environment, mitigate
forces
attacks
are
if they
under
come.
attack.
We can't be opening a support ticket.
Oh yeah, the hotel would not have a chance against this, would they?
Not a chance in hell.
And what do you tell them? Just shut it all down while we're here?
Yeah, we actually do. We just say, please shut the Wi-Fi in these areas. Yeah. Yeah, it's it's an interesting.
You'd think that they'd
challenge.
want to hire you to set up their Wi-Fi to be
Your
resilient
forces are
against
under
stuff like
attack.
this. And say, wait, just leave what you have here because we'll just use it from now on.
Yeah, they're getting better. Again, as like years have gone on and stuff, they're getting better. Not to the point that we're willing to like let them run things
Your
because
forces are
again,
under attack.
like well, one we call ourselves a NOC, but we are a full-fledged NOC. We have every piece of equipment that a modern-day security operations center has in there. And
Base is under attack.
when we initially started out, we were running everything with like open source, hardware, open source scripts and software and commercial stuff that you could just buy at like Best Buy, right?
The budget was very small. But if you go to Black Hat, one thing you won't miss is the
Your
exposed
forces
floors.
are under
I went
attack.
last year, and I was blown away at how big it has grown. This is a room, but if you're a cybersecurity vendor, you can set up a booth there, pitch your products to people who are walking through the conference.
Base is under
I
attack.
walked through, and it took me hours and hours to just try to walk past every booth and just read their name. It felt like it went on forever.
Your forces are under
Every
attack.
cybersecurity company in the world seemed to be there. And there must have been hundreds. So, as this Black Hat knock grew, it needed more sophisticated equipment. And Grifter wondered, well, with
Your
all these
forces are
vendors
under
here,
attack.
would any of them let us use their gear? Like, just for the week?
And so we were like, well, what if we went down to the expo floor and we approached some of the
Insufficient
vendors and we say,
vespene
hey,
gas.
if you'll let us use your equipment or give us a software license, we'll put
Your
a
forces
logo,
are under
like
attack.
in the program that says like you help like partner with the Black Hat
Yes,
knock.
sir.
We go to the first
Proceed.
like vendor that we wanted to talk to. They're like, yeah, oh, absolutely. And they were like, when?
on your
Like
mind?
now? Like, do you
Your
want
forces
equipment? Do you
are
want
under
people?
attack.
Like, and I was like, this response was like on a level that I wasn't prepared for. And so I was like, I think we might be onto something here, and they were like, we'd love to help support it.
Your forces are
We'll
under
give you
attack.
whatever you need. And I just looked at Bart and I was like, let's go shopping.
Somebody call for an
So him and Buzz,
exterminator.
the other guy who runs the knocker,
Never know what hit
realized
'em.
that every vendor would love for them to use their
Never
equipment for
know
free
what hit 'em.
because each vendor would love to be able to say, we're trusted by Black Hat. If a hacker conference uses
Your
our
forces are
equipment,
under
surely
attack.
that's got to mean something. And this made building the Black Hat
Ghost
knocker
reporting.
even more fun, knowing that they could just walk down the hall and get any equipment they wanted to help secure this network. That's cool. And once vendors heard that Blister was doing this, they started begging them to use their equipment.
We've been offering money from vendors before where they're like, you want to check, like personally, not the Black Hat. Like they're like, hey, Grifter, I'll cut you a check for $100,000 if